Here is what Donald Trump posted moments ago. There is no talk and conversation going on or a schedule with Islamic Republic of Iran, and the naval blockade remains in full force and effect. The Hormuz Strait is open and operating. All all water mines have been removed and detonated. Thank you for your attention. And here is coming back to Donald Trump. Today he posted something, even better than what he what he said on this post, which was this is the other post that he did this morning. He says the Strait of Hormuz is ours and it's a part of the United States. He wants to annex that. And this is what's going on with Donald Trump currently. We learned yesterday he said he's going to bomb Oman, the country. It means that he's not happy with whatever is going on between Iran and Oman. And what do you make of what's going on, Carl? You mentioned Pete Hegseth talking today.
Put the first slide back up, if you would, please.
Yeah.
The naval blockade remains in full force. I would say substitute there Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz, along with Oman, remains in full force. The Hormuz Strait is open and operating. It is, as long as you conform with Iran and Oman's regime. All water mines have been removed or detonated. I can't tell you about that. Thank you for your attention and so forth. This is exactly what Pete Hegseth was doing just a few moments ago in his capacity as Secretary of War Defense, outlining in detail how Iran's ballistic missiles were all gone, how the capacity of Iran to make new missiles was non-existent, how Iran was out, in other words, of all essential munitions, how morale was dropping like a rock in the IRGC forces and throughout Iran. He went on listing all of this. And when he finished, I had jotted down an outline of what he said. I went back, I looked at it, and I said, he is describing explicitly and accurately the position of the United States of America, not Iran's. So what is he trying to do? This can't be a coincidence. He's not that stupid. He's outlining for the world the condition of the United States. And let me tell you, most people in the world, at least 2/3 of it, know fundamentally, if not detail by detail, that Iran is winning this conflict. And so why did he do that? Why did he do that? And why do they keep protesting, mightily protesting, that everything is working according to oil? Indeed, we're going to make it the 51st state, apparently, that everything is working according to oil because of what the United States has done, when the diametric opposite is the reality. So this is a psychological campaign of the first order that is not going to work on any global citizen, let alone regional citizen, who knows how if they're on one side of the strait, how they're reeling from Iranian attacks, and if they're on the other side, how effective they're being. So what are we delivering this message for? And then the answer comes screaming at you, the midterms. We're trying desperately to resurrect some of Trump's swagger, some of his incredible art of the deal persona. That's what we're trying to do. Just as Bibi Netanyahu is trying to do what he is doing in Israel, which is convince, even if he has to defy Jared Kushner, defy the group that's going to form its consortium eventually in Gaza, even if he has to defy his own antagonist, and there are a few in Jerusalem, if he has to do that, so be it, because he is going to lie his way into being reelected. That's what he thinks he's doing. And Trump thinks he's going to lie his way into a successful midterm. That's all I can figure about this. It's all addressed, even from Hegseth's mouth, at domestic political purpose, that they don't even probably understand the depth of their defeat in the Persian Gulf. What they're doing, though, because you've got to have from Kane and from others, the service chiefs, probably some of the combatant commanders, you've got to have some idea just how bad a shape you're in, particularly militarily. We won't even go into financially and otherwise because that's pretty draconian too. But you just mask it. You propagandize. You pull out a BB and you lie and you lie and you lie. And you pull out a Karl Rove who said on more than one occasion, if I keep lying, people will believe it. If I tell you something is what it is, even though it's a falsehood, again and again and again, you will wind up believing it. That seems to be the philosophy that they're operating off of. I can't explain it any other way because otherwise I'd have to think they're all totally, utterly insane.
Colonel, what do they have in their mind when it comes to the continuation of the blockade, which it seems that Iran finally something big gonna happen with the blockade?
Well, let's look at the logistics of it. First of all, Iran did a really strategic move in the very beginning, the first strikes and so forth. They followed up, of course, and made them even deeper, but they destroyed the eyes and ears of the American military in the region. Bahrain being the leading, utterly destroyed entity in that regard. We had to evacuate almost everyone from Bahrain in a precipitous way, too, because Marco Rubio had made no provisions for non-combatant evacuation operations. So what did that do? Well, it also destroyed the one place, there are others, but that was the principal place. Kuwait was another one, for example. But for naval forces, Oman was the principal place where you went for resupplies and you went for what little bit of R&R, off time you might get. It might not be more than a day, port call or whatever. Now they're having to go 2,200 miles to Diego Garcia. That's a hell of a long way to have to go back and forth. That explains why Lincoln, for example, has all these morale problems. And Bradley Cooper's trip and, marching up and down the flight deck and so forth doesn't change this at all. And his words don't change it at all. Lincoln has significant problems, both morale problems exemplified by the suicides or near suicides, and problems in terms of efficiency of operation, because you cannot keep one of these carriers at that level of readiness at sea for so long without deteriorating majorly. And it's a miracle that we haven't had, and we may have had, because they would hide it if we had. We hadn't had some catapult problems, some planes falling off the aircraft carrier, or casualties on board. This is what happened off Vietnam in my war, when we kept carriers on station for a long time running flight operations against North Vietnam and so forth. We had some catastrophic accidents, one particularly catastrophic accident. I'm just waiting for that to happen. I hope it doesn't, but that's what we're breeding on these carriers that have been out so long. So I don't understand how, I do understand, back up a little, I do understand how Hegseth thinks he has to lie, how Trump has to lie, how other members of the administration, and Bessent is lying through his teeth about the state of the economy. They have to lie because they have no other alternative. I don't understand why the military continues to lie. Bradley Cooper, okay, I'll give you that. He's a lying sack of, proverbial horse turds. But others like Kane and the service chiefs and so forth, why they're continuing to go along with this, and I'm hearing more and more with regard to possible use of nuclear weapons, because Trump is getting desperate. Nuclear weapons against Iran. And when I hear that from people like Colby and others who are writing about it even, then I understand how desperate they're getting. And what is the military going to do when the commander-in-chief turns to them and says, prepare a nuclear strike on Iran? Are they going to say no? Are they going to, as they've done to this point, go along? What's going to happen? Are we going to have a civil war inside the military? What's going to happen? Because I see Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu marching inexorably to a point where both of them might and indeed could use nuclear weapons. That is a frightening prospect. Not since 1945, of course, have we killed human beings with nuclear weapons. And I think we're on the verge of the potential, at least, for doing it again. And I'm not just talking about Southwest Asia. I'm also talking about that other war that we have messed up so dramatically, the war in Ukraine. I was reading an Asia scholar yesterday. Good man, writes well about writes in contemporary terms also about Northeast Asia and East Asia in general, for example, Indonesia. He says, what happened? What happened? Well, Ukraine barked and Russia reacted. Well, Japan barked and China reacted. And now, if you've been following the news, the yen is crashing and the Japan economy is going through the tubes. And it's all because China turned around after Japan barked and put tariffs on everything. And Japan can't take this. They can't take this. Who got the dogs to bark? Asked this scholar. And then he answers his own question, of course. The United States of America. They got the dogs to bark. Well, Nima, I was present. I was present in the administration where we started training the dogs. Jens Stoltenberg, Mark Rutte, the leaders of most of the countries of NATO who were not at that time countries of NATO. I was there when we began to get the dogs to bark. So that's where we are now in both of these conflicts. And the dogs having barked in both Ukraine and in Japan have caused real significant problems with all our allies. And the only reason Japan and South Korea, in my view, the only reason they haven't thus far reacted accordingly is because in South Korea, they know we allowed Kim Jong-un to get a nuclear weapon. And in Japan, they're just pro forma disturbed about that, of course. They were at the time very disturbed that Kim had gotten a nuclear weapon. Now, but at that point in time, they agreed to stay with the status quo. There, after all, wasn't any place to run to, not without being naked, at least for a while, until you got your own house in order in terms of national security. I think they're both thinking right now, and Donald Trump's comments about maybe we'll just reduce the presence on the Korean Peninsula didn't help at all. I think both of those allies, steady allies for a long time, are contemplating deserting the ship. And I wouldn't doubt it at all that they would do so, because I don't think they're going to be given much choice if Donald Trump continues on his present course of action in both Ukraine and in Southwest Asia. We're destroying our allies. We're destroying everything about them. And we got a guy like Elbridge Colby, I think it is, wrote the article the other day, which essentially says, well, the suggestion there is strong that nuclear weapons ought to be used. But the suggestion there, too, is that we should retreat to the Western Hemisphere. And people were saying, oh, well, you know, this is what Donald Trump wanted to do and so forth. We're not retreating, Nima, because Donald Trump wants to. We're not retreating because he had such easy time in Venezuela. We're not retreating because he wants Cuba to be the 51st state. We're not retreating because Greenland will be the 52nd state. We're not retreating for any of those reasons. We're retreating because we're being walloped. We're being walloped by the incredible power and forward movement of the Base Road Initiative and the country behind it, China. Aided and abetted now by Russia, by Iran, and by the other BRICS nations plus. So that's why we're running. We are running because we have no choice, and we're claiming that we're coming back to the Western Hemisphere and we're going to dominate that. Good luck with that. Good luck with that, because that power coming at you from the East is going to curb your ability to even do that. So we are so tragically mistaken right now, Nima, that I don't see how we're going to get ourselves out of this domestically or internationally without dismemberment or falling apart in some other way, or dramatic conditions developing in this country, which are just around the corner. Just around the corner, we are looking at massive physical problems that only a few are really becoming aware of right now, such as the incredible bubble in the AI market and the equities market, and even more dramatic, the bond market and what's happening there. and the incredible inability of the people managing this physical disaster to come up with a plan to even stick their finger in the hole in the dike for a temporary time. We're hurting, Nima. We're really hurting. And as we hurt and as we get sicker and sicker, we are not going to dominate our hemisphere. We're going to contaminate it. All I can say for Brazil is hold out best you can.
Carl, what do you make of what Donald Trump did yesterday, attacking the South Korea after removing air defense systems from their soil and bringing them to the West Asia in order to help Israel? And
this is all part of the same strategy, Nima. As I was just saying, we're retreating, and we're claiming we're not. We're claiming we're going to do this, wonderful thing in the Western Hemisphere, and we're going to have a redoubt here, and no one will be able to touch us, and all that other crap. I'm sorry, the world is changing, and it is changing dramatically. It's changing swifter than I ever thought it would. I knew it was changing. I knew it was going to be maybe in my lifetime that I would see the beginnings of it, but it is just upon us. And it's upon us with a vengeance. The latest development, of course, being the consortium that Russia and China have formed in order to develop the most likely Northwest Passage. That is to say that 53% of the Arctic that lies adjacent to Russian soil. They're going to develop it together. And that's a real pain for us too, because it means this new frontier, if you will, both underneath the water and above the water, that is to say maritime assets passing through and mining taking place underneath. All manner of things are predicted to be in the Arctic, rare earth metals, you name it, all those kinds of things, in addition to standard stuff like oil and gas. And Russia's going to have 53% of that, and China's going to be in the consortium with them. We're losing, Nima. We're losing. We're losing dramatically. And there's this inchoate sense in the Pentagon in particular, but also throughout the government, even with these brain dead people in the secretarial positions, in the positions that actually are doing things still that are in their purview, they know that they're losing, and they don't know how to deal with it, what to do about it, and they have an utterly incompetent commander-in-chief giving them directions.
Carl,
you may have seen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but yesterday you may have seen the American Meteorological Society and NOAA, the National Oceans and Aeronautic Administration, NOAA, whom I've worked with for a long time, very, very good scientists there. Most of my work with them was on oceans. They both came out with a report that is worse than the last climate report we got from the UN. I thought I was reading the results, the worst case results of the Center for Naval Analysis simulations we ran back in 2006 and 7 with a lot of the world participating. And we said by 2065, this is going to be the worst case scenario. Well, we're looking at the worst case scenario beginning to develop now in places like France and Spain and in the western part of this country, with both drenching rains and drought at the same time, forest fires, unbelievable. We are seeing much of what we thought we were going to start seeing 10 to 15 years later now.
Carl, we had a new report from Syria that Israel hit some targets in Syria. It seems that it's related to the Turkish positions in Syria. The ammunitions were hit because you see from the footage, you see the secondary explosions happening. It means that they hit some, logistics there in Syria. And the other point is, with the latest defense pact between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Turkey, we had two different interpretations. One of them was from Antony Blinken, which was pointed out in an article of, Fareed Zakaria. He said that basically we're losing, and these people are finding their way into West Asia. And he was warning the Trump administration. On the other hand, you see Donald Trump himself coming out yesterday. He said, I totally agree with the new. I congratulate these countries because of this new agreement that they're making, and we know how critical is how they're different on, they're not on the same side in Syria, for example, as
I got
you see.
I got to run for just a second. Okay.
Okay.
This medicine I'm taking does things to me.
Go ahead.
I'll be
Larry.
right back.
Go ahead.
I'll be right back.
Go ahead. Yeah, we're gonna talk about this because moments ago we've learned that we learned that Israel is hitting the targets in Syria. This is a serious issue because you see two sides, Turkey and Israel. They're fighting each other in Syria. We know how serious is that, and the role of the United States under the Trump administration. Donald Trump tries to keep its best relationship with Turkey, and he knows that how the Turkish people or Turkish government feels about Israel. This is the basic problem that I think the military pact has much more meaning than what we've heard so far. It's not just about a single interpretation. It's against Israel or against Iran or all of these sort of speculation that are going on. And here is Carl coming back.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I think, Carl, we want to know, what is the meaning of that pact and with what's going on in Syria, which we know is a deep sort of difference between the two sides, Israel and Turkey, and the two interpretations inside the United States.
Ever since I read about what Jelani, Putin, and apparently the Russian military had agreed to with regard to the Russian facilities on the coast, both the airfield and the port, I've been perplexed about what's happening there. I can't pretend to know what's happening. I could make some surmises, and I think in the middle of the surmises, I would have to put Erdogan, even though I find him an extremely mercurial and rarely anything but duplicitous character. At the same time, he's, for example, making money off Bibi Netanyahu. He's condemning him, probably the most egregious example of it. But what's going on in Syria right now seems to be a contest of some sort, not on the front burner for any of them, but could be at any moment, between Turkey, Israel, to a certain extent, Lebanon caught in the middle, and Iran, with regard to who ultimately is going to see either Syrian territory folded into its own, Israel, or at a minimum, Syrian complicity with what Israel wants to do using Syrian soil, which I would warn Jelani about. Netanyahu or whomever follows him will not leave you alone. So you are lying down with a beast when you lie down with Israel. That he doesn't understand that is kind of beyond my ken. I think he understands that, so I have to guess, educated guess, that he's doing it to gain some time. And he's got to worry about Erdogan too, because Erdogan has not settled his business, if you will, with the Kurds, except possibly in Kurdistan. And that's been sort of a fait accompli caused by the fact that Baghdad has as much trouble with them as Turkey does. So all of this has the Kurds in all three countries, to a certain extent, involved in it, with a weather eye turned by all the leaders toward them and what their aspirations might ultimately be, including Iran, probably, although they seem to have handled it pretty well. But to go any further than that and to predict what is going to happen with Syria-Russia relations, what's going to happen with Iran-Syria relations, what's going to happen with Lebanon-Syria relations, Netanyahu would love to have Jelani join him in consolidating Netanyahu's control over Lebanon. But Jelani must understand that. I mean, the guy might be Al-Qaeda, but he does seem to have a brain. So he's got to have some real suspicions of what Netanyahu's ultimate motives are. And you don't have to go very far to find Netanyahu's ultimate motivations. They are territory. Territory. Get out of my way. I want to kill you if you get in my way. Which brings me back to Gaza. where we are again killing people, massively killing people again. I mean, not as massively as we were doing immediately after 7 October, but they're killing people again. And I understand Kushner sat right there and said something to that effect to Netanyahu, and Netanyahu said, yeah, I'm not killing them quite as fast as I need to. And I assume he meant East Jerusalem and north of there and in the West Bank in general. And no one's saying anything. You probably saw yesterday he killed a whole bunch of people in Lebanon too. I was told that about 1 or 2 out of the several dozens that he killed in Lebanon were Hezbollah. The rest of them were just innocent Lebanese. So we're going again there, apparently, and they're on the move even as I'm talking to you right now. So what is going on with Netanyahu other than he's got to do all these draconian things, he thinks, and he may be right, in order to get the Jewish citizens of Israel to vote for him rather than one of his opponents. So it's domestic politics. And he must be, as I've said before, calling Trump at night, perhaps, and saying, I got to do this. Don't pay any attention. I don't really mean it, but I've got to do it to get reelected. Or, duplicitous bastard that he is, he's doing it and going to continue to do it. And to hell with Donald Trump. And what I see coming from this, just as I see coming from Trump with regard to Iran, just as I see coming from Russia with regard to Ukraine, and possibly other places as well, I see contemplation of the use of nuclear weapons. And I see it dramatically on the part of Bibi Netanyahu, because people tell me, not just Alistair Crook, not just some of the other people who are reporting on the draconian conditions in Israel, but people on the ground in Israel are telling me, this is a desperate situation. How are we going to get out of this? And even contending amongst themselves as to whom they're going to vote for, because they don't know who of those for whom they can vote might be best at getting them out of the dilemma they're in. Meanwhile, they're losing citizens at a rate they've never lost citizens before. He can't keep immigrants coming in as fast as people are leaving Israel now, especially Jewish citizens. Israel's falling apart. In that case, I think Alistair is right. It is falling apart. It's falling apart before Bibi's eyes. I'm reading about this woman who is resurrecting Yitzhak Rabin's legacy, if you will. You probably know her name. Her name just escaped me, but I read in Haaretz a long article about how she went around talking to everyone. And I'm wondering, as the whole thing is transpiring, I'm wondering how she's doing this, because it's pretty difficult to get around there now above ground. And then I find out that it was written long ago about what she was doing. So I don't know where Israel is going except down and down and down. And Netanyahu is going to be the leader of that downward movement. What happens when he gets to the end of his tether, politically, personally, Israel? I don't know, but I think the most prominent place for the potential use of a nuclear weapon is by Bibi Netanyahu, because his dream is going away. It's going away. Whether we consider Syria and Jordan and Iraq as part of that dream is really inconsequential right now, except in the long term, should he succeed in this objective, he wants to get rid of Iran. He still wants to get rid of Iran, and if he has to drag America into that attempt, kicking and screaming, he will do so. But I can't find, Nima, I cannot find the military wherewithal left in the United States, in Israel, Israeli or U.S., to do that unless you use nuclear weapons. So that's where I've come to with all this, meandering around the region, trying to figure out what each of the leaders is thinking or going to do. What I see as the most important leader and the most important thing he might do is understanding Israel's existential situation, use a nuclear weapon.